What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the End Zone Report. I am your host, Chris, and this is the show where we tackle the NFL. We got another awesome episode for y'all today, a very jam-packed one. We're going to cover some Week 9 injuries, along with the trade deadline that just happened yesterday. Then we'll jump into the current division standings and go over some sleeper teams and bottom-of-the-barrel teams for the second half of the 2025 season. Then we'll, of course, do the Chase-O-Meter. We'll catch up with Chase Brown and his stats and that awesome bet between James and Megan, the Gridiron Goddess. Then we'll head over to Fantasy Corner, where we'll touch on the top 5 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And then, of course, we'll also cover the hero and villain of Week 9. Then we'll head into the Week 10 slate. We got some awesome matchups heading into Week 10. And then we'll end the show like we always do with a DFS lineup where we hope to get shown the money. Couple reminders before we get into today's episode. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/TheEndZoneReport. You can also listen to the audio version on Spotify. Check out the social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and X, where I post all the artwork from each episode, along with other trade news, injury updates, and many, many more news around the NFL. Yeah, let's get into today's jam-packed mid-season review episode with What's Up with the NFL. Once again, we have another week filled with injuries and a couple season-ending injuries. Unfortunately, Jayden Daniels, quarterback of the Washington Commanders, suffered a dislocated elbow. That was a gruesome injury. It's right up there with the Cam Skattebo injury earlier in the year. Good news, he doesn't seem to have torn any ligaments or tendons in the elbow, but there is a uncertain timetable from head coach Dan Quinn. So we'll monitor his status. More than likely, Marcus Mariota will be starting the rest of the regular season as the starter and quarterback. Come week 16, week 17, week 18, we'll see where Jayden Daniels is at. If they end up making the playoffs, he could make a return there. But it's looking very, very likely that Jayden Daniels could be done for the year, but we'll monitor that situation, of course, for any updates. Sticking with the quarterback room, CJ Stroud, quarterback of the Houston Texans, took a pretty nasty hit during the game on Sunday. He did suffer a concussion and left early. He is currently in the concussion protocol, so we'll monitor his status. If he does not play, it will be Davis Mills once again at quarterback. Kyler Murray, this just came out today, actually. He was placed on injured reserve by the Cardinals for a foot injury. It was looking likely that he would end up getting benched anyways for Jacoby Brissett, who has been a really competent and efficient quarterback for the Cardinals the last few weeks. This seems to be the most cleanest way to bench Kyler Murray. It's kind of a blessing in disguise that the foot injury has not been healing properly like they wish they would. Kyler, on top of that, has been pretty inefficient throughout the first half of the year. So this seems to be the cleanest way possible. And it's very, very possible that Kyler is not with the Cardinals next year. They could potentially move on from him and stick with Jacoby Brissett or test out the quarterback free agent market or even in the draft in 2026. So very interesting quarterback room right now for the Arizona Cardinals. Tucker Kraft, the superstar tight end for the Green Bay Packers, unfortunately suffered a torn ACL this past week, and he is out for the year. That really sucks because he is in the top 5 tight ends of the year so far, and his season, unfortunately, has come to an end very, very quickly. Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver of the Washington Commanders, broke his collarbone. Looks like he's going to be out for a while, if not the rest of the season as well. Rome Odunze for the Chicago Bears, who had a giant goose egg this past week, is dealing with an ankle and a heel injury, so his status for Week 10 is up in the air. Rico Dowdle, superstar running back for the Carolina Panthers, who has been setting fantasy teams skyrocketing into the hemispheres, is dealing with a quad injury. Hopefully that he gets some work in tomorrow or Friday so that he can be available for Week 10 because they do have a nice matchup this week. And then James Cook, running back of the Buffalo Bills, is suffering both a foot and ankle injury, so his status for Week 10 is also up in the air. We'll monitor his practice schedule for sure. Going back to the wide receiver room, Michael Pittman, wide receiver of the Indianapolis Colts, is dealing with a glute injury. It doesn't seem too serious from what I'm understanding from the reports coming out of practice camp. So hopefully Pittman can keep rolling with the Colts in Week 10. Marshawn Lattimore, again with the Washington Commanders. Commanders are really banged up after this week. He also tore his ACL, and he is out for the year most likely. And then Joe Alt of the Los Angeles Chargers suffered a season-ending ankle injury, and he will undergo surgery, so he is out, which is unfortunate because he just got back from an injury early in the year. So the Chargers are very, very hurt there at the lineman position with Joe Alt out. So that pretty much wraps up the injuries. I think I saw DJ Moore is dealing with an injury still. A.J. Brown coming out with a bye is dealing with an injury. So if you have any of those guys on your fantasy team, make sure you monitor that, and we will update you of any inactives or out players for Week 10. Check out those social media pages. I'm pretty quick at posting all those as soon as they come through. Switching gears, let's go over that trade deadline, which ended yesterday, November 4th. Not as big as a crazy trade deadline that we were hoping for, but we did get some action. Jakobi Meyers was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars in exchange for a 4th and 6th pick. Jakobi Meyers, it seems that he will be the outside threat, and Parker Washington filling in for Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter will be remaining in the slot. Brian Thomas Jr. is dealing with an injury, so we'll see if he does end up playing in Week 10. But Jakobi Meyers is something that they very, very much needed. I was hoping he would end up in Denver, but Denver did not make any moves before the deadline, which I am very, very disappointed in. We need tight end. We need wide receiver help. We could even bolster up the defense. I'd be totally fine with getting Sauce Gardner, who we'll talk about here in just a couple seconds. But Jakobi Meyers will be a huge positive for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That wide receiver room has been a bit banged up the last few weeks. Even Dyami Brown has been banged up as well. So they really needed a wide receiver, and a 4th and 6th round pick seemed to have done it for Jakobi Meyers. Speaking of Sauce Gardner, he was traded to the Indianapolis Colts in exchange for 2 first-round picks, 1 first-rounder in 2026, another first-rounder in 2027, along with wide receiver Adonai Mitchell. That's a really nice trade there for the Colts. You can tell that they are really aiming for not just a playoff run, but a Lombardi trophy, and they're making the right moves. Daniel Jones is looking really, really good with that system that Steichen is. Michael Pittman has been a top wide receiver. Alex Pierce has been involved. Josh Downs is starting to get involved. Tyler Warren, the Super Bowl superstar tight end that they drafted this past draft, has been really great. And Jonathan Taylor is leading the league in rushing touchdowns. So Colts are all in on the 2025 season, and they're eyes on the Super Bowl. So nicely done getting Sauce Gardner for the Colts. Rashid Shaheed got sent to Seattle Seahawks in exchange for a 4th and 5th round pick. This is really good for the Seahawks. This helps Sam Darnold get more comfortable and more stable and more weapons. Cooper Kupp, who they brought over from the Rams, has not really been involved or been pretty much been zero efficient in this offense. So they needed extra help at wide receiver. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been really great this year, especially if you have him on your fantasy team. Torrey Horton, the rookie, just balled out this past Sunday. So they needed to add a little extra cushion to Sam Darnold, and I really like this. Rashid Shaheed was a big positive in the Saints offense when he was playing there, and now that he's getting thrown to a much more competent quarterback, I think the Seahawks are also aiming for that Super Bowl trophy and making a playoff run. So bravo on them to get another weapon for Sam Darnold, who's having a heck of a year. I'm going to take a huge L on the Seahawks. I was predicting that they would end at the bottom of the division. They're at the very, very top right now, and they seem to be one of the best teams in the NFL right now. So bravo to Sam Darnold for proving me wrong. They are a very, very fun team, and I'm super excited to watch the Seahawks the rest of the year. On defense, Logan Wilson was sent over to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for a 7th round pick. This is something that the Cowboys needed. They needed to bolster their defense. Now, is Logan Wilson going to get the job done? We'll see. He really that Bengals defense is just a disaster all around. But maybe with a new system, Logan Wilson can find some benefit in that, as well as the Cowboys and him. So we'll see what that trade is like. But the Cowboys needed to do something on defense. They were very, very horrendous, giving up 47 points to Caleb Williams and the Bears. So they had to do something drastically. And then Jaheir Alexander was sent over to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for a 6th-round pick. Eagles, of course, bolstering their defense in order to make a playoff run. So that was very smart on their part. Those are the big trades made before the deadline. Of course, we've already had the Joe Flacco trade a few weeks ago for the Bengals. That is a really, really smart trade. It's looking at right now. He's been a top quarterback, and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins have been really great for not just the NFL, but for fantasy. Chase Brown is getting more involved now. So Joe Flacco, I'll mention here as well as being another trade before the deadline. So that about does it for injuries and news. Let's head over to the division check-in. All right, welcome back to Division Warfare. We're going to check in with all the current division standings after Week 9. We'll start with the AFC, and then we'll make our way into the NFC. So the AFC West, my boys, the Denver Broncos, are sitting at top of the standings at 7-2. Very excited for Bo Nix and the Broncos heading into the second half of the season. Los Angeles Chargers has been kind of a bumpy and messy ride this first half. Hopefully they find a better groove in the second half, but they are sitting at second in the division at 6-3. The Chiefs, surprisingly, are sitting at 5-4, third in the AFC West division. I read a report just before recording that they attempted to make a running back move in the trade deadline phase. They tried to acquire Breece Hall from the New York Jets. They requested that they send over a 4th-round pick, but it sounds like the price tag for Breece Hall was a 3rd-round pick. I think that was a huge mistake on the Chiefs' part. They should have paid up a little bit with a 3rd-rounder because that running back room is a mess. When your leading rusher is your quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, that is not good. He cannot sustain that for the entire season. So they need to figure out something with the running back room, whether it's pulling from the practice squad or rotating out to find who's more efficient. But if they are going to turn this around sitting at 5-4, they're going to need to figure out that running back room and try to get Patrick Mahomes more help. The defense seems to be pretty solid under Spagnuolo once again. So it's really just an offensive issue, I think, just getting him that support that he needs. And then sitting last in the division is the Las Vegas Raiders. It's been pretty ugly so far. They sit at 2-6. Brock Bowers has finally returned, and he had a superstar week with 3 touchdowns. So he is back. That's going to be a huge, huge help to Geno Smith, who has been having a lot of turnover issues this first half of the season. Ashton Jeanty has been kind of up and down for the most part. He's shown a lot of spark in this offense, so I think they're going to continue to run through him and Brock Bowers. Now that Jacoby Myers is gone, you're sitting at Trey Tucker, Tyler Lockett as your wide receiver room. Jack Besh is also in there as well, so it's looking pretty ugly at wide receiver. This offense is going to run through Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty, so I don't expect the Raiders to make any kind of leap, especially with losing Jacoby Myers, their only real competent and experienced wide receiver. So I'm going to say that they stick here at the bottom. Now, I could easily see the Chiefs maybe leapfrogging the Chargers if the Chargers can't get out of their slump. It's very, very possible, too, that they could jump into first. But with what Denver has showed me on defense and offense, I think I'm going to have, and this isn't me just being biased, like I truly think looking at the first 9 weeks of the season, I think the Broncos will end up being at the top of this division. I think really the action is going to be within the middle there. It's between the Chargers and the Chiefs. I think where the standings are right now is what's going to happen at the end. So this is how I predict by the end of Week 18, these standings will go. But like I said, the real action is going to be between the Chargers and Chiefs, I think, in that middle of the standings. So that is the AFC West currently after Week 9 of the season. Heading over to the AFC South. The Indianapolis Colts are on top of the division right now at 7-2. They are one of the teams that with the best record in football right now. Daniel Jones is lighting it up right now with the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, like I said before, is leading the league in touchdowns. Michael Pittman has been a superstar wide receiver. Tyler Warren is the tight end that they were hoping to draft in. He has been great for this team. And the defense, now with Sauce Gardner, is really going to be a superpower. They could compete with Denver at being the number one defense with Sauce Gardner coming into town. So Colts are sitting at the top. They are eyeballing that Lombardi trophy currently. The Jacksonville Jaguars are come next in the division at 5-3. Now, with losing Travis Hunter to the IR, with the Brian Thomas Jr. disappointments and now injury, it's really tough for me to think that these guys are going to stay second. But we'll see. Their defense is still pretty solid. Travis Etienne has shown that he's a pretty competent back. You also have Tootin there to back him up, the rookie that they drafted. So, but I think just like the AFC West, a lot of the action are going to be in the middle here. So at number 3, that's where the Houston Texans are at 3-5. I'm predicting that they will easily leapfrog the Jaguars. Their defense has been really, really solid the last couple weeks. I know CJ Stroud is dealing with a concussion right now. There's a possibility that he does play in week 10, but eventually he will come back. They need to work on the wide receiver room in this team, but I think the defense will carry the Houston Texans to number 2. So I'm actually predicting that the Jaguars and the Texans are going to end up flipping by the end of week 18. And then we have the Titans at 1-8 with their rookie quarterback, Cam Ward. That is not going to change. They could potentially win maybe 1 or 2 more games. But this record at 1-8 is about as ugly as you're going to continue to see. So I'm going to predict that the Titans remain on the bottom. The Colts will remain on the top. So that is my guess for the rest of the year for the AFC South. Looking at the AFC East, we've got the New England Patriots at the top with 7-2. They are currently on a 6-win streak, just like the Denver Broncos are. Drake May is incredible. We will talk about Drake May a little bit more later on in the episode during the Fantasy Corner segment, but he has been excellent. Stephon Diggs is finally becoming a reliable target for him. He's been using Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte. Ramondre Stevenson has been dealing with some injuries at running back, but Travion Henderson, the rookie that they drafted, he has shown a lot of spurt this last week as the starter. So I think the Patriots are sitting pretty comfortably in the division. Now, coming in second is the Buffalo Bills, led by superstar MVP Josh Allen. He definitely needs help at wide receiver. I was kind of hoping that Buffalo would have made a wide receiver move before the deadline, but I guess they seem pretty content with their current wide receiver room right now with Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and then, of course, they have Dalton Kincaid, who has been Josh Allen's favorite target there at tight end. James Cook, who is currently dealing with some injuries, has also been super awesome. He hasn't really taken a step back from last year. And the defense for Buffalo has been pretty solid. So I think the real battle here is between Buffalo and New England, but I do think Buffalo will end up taking the top spot by the end of the year with bringing the Patriots down to second. Now, the Dolphins and the Jets. Dolphins come in at 3 at 2-7, and the Jets, come in at 1-7. Very, very ugly starts of the season for these two teams. Miami, with the Tua situation, with losing Tyreek Hill for the rest of the year. Devon Achane has been a superstar running back. The defense has been very horrendous. I think they're dead last in rush defense. It's just been a mess in Miami. They parted ways with their GM. There was a lot of talk with, potential firing of Mike McDaniel there as coach, but they came out and already said that he will finish out the year as coach. And then the Jets is just another mess altogether in New York with Justin Fields getting benched for Tyrod Taylor, but now starting again because Tyrod Taylor got injured. They parted ways with Sauce Gardner and Quinton Williams. We were expecting a Breece Hall departure. I know Garrett Wilson has been vocal about being traded as well. So the bottom, I think, is going to be remaining the Jets, unfortunately, even though they were a team that I was super excited to watch this year with Justin Fields coming over from Pittsburgh and Aaron Glenn coming in as head coach from Detroit. But I think right now the real battle, like I said, is between Buffalo and New England. The bottom half of this division, I think, is where it's going to stay. It's going to stay Dolphins and then the Jets at the very bottom. So that is my prediction for the rest of the season for AFC East. And then finishing off the AFC, we head over to the North. The Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting at the top of the division with Aaron Rodgers at 5-3. It's been not the prettiest first 9 weeks of the season, but 5-3 is a solid record to be at the top. It's definitely the lowest one of the AFC. But with the current state of this division, not surprising. Baltimore, really, really rough start with losing Lamar for multiple weeks. The defense has been banged up and really weak. And that is just really unfortunate that Lamar is sitting here going into week 10 at 3-5 on the season. Now, they're going up against Minnesota this weekend. We'll see if they can handle that Brian Flores defense. But I think right now, this division is really tough. It used to be the division that I was most excited about because you had the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Bengals all competing. You know, the Browns have already had their problems the last how many years. But this division is pretty ugly. I think right now it's really anybody's to take. Baltimore could shoot up at the top. I mean, depending on when Joe Burrow gets back, I think he's still set to come back in the middle of December. It's possible that the Bengals maybe find a groove with Joe Flacco even more to where they overtake the top, but it's going to be really challenging with that defense. It's one of the worst defenses in the league along with Miami and Dallas. So this is a really messy one because you got the Bengals here at 3-6. You've got the Cleveland Browns at the bottom at 2-6, who have a really, really solid defense, but that offense is running through Dylan Gabriel right now. And I don't know how much they can sustain that right now. They might even, I'm thinking we're going to get some Shadur Sanders here very, very quick. If not week 11, maybe week 12, when we start to get a better picture of the outcome of the playoffs and division standings. So where we're sitting now, I think what's going to happen at the end of the season, we are going to see Baltimore end up overtaking the top spot from Pittsburgh. That'll drop Pittsburgh down to second. And then I think the second half is going to remain the same with the Bengals at 3 and Cleveland sitting last in the division. So that is my prediction for the North. But this is a pretty messy division right now with the injuries and the lack of production on both the defensive side for Baltimore and Cincy, and then the offensive side for the Cleveland Browns. So we'll see what happens with the AFC North. Heading over to the NFC, we've got the NFC East. The Philadelphia Eagles are currently at the top at 6-2. Definitely been a crazy start of the season for them. Saquon Barkley hasn't been really much involved the first few weeks after his superstar year last year. Jalen Hurts has been throwing the ball more. There's been the controversy with the tush push now, with all the no calls and the weird penalties from the refs. Dallas comes in at number 2 at 4-4. The Commanders, with all of their injuries and the up and down status of Jaden Daniels, is sitting at 3-6, who was originally my pick to take the division. And then the New York Giants are sitting at 2-7 with their crazy year that they've had with the Cam Scatterbo phase before his injury. Jackson Dart has been really fun and competent to watch. He unfortunately doesn't really have any weapons at his disposal with the Malik Neighbors season-ending injury as well. It's very unfortunate because the Giants were really looking like they could have made a run for the playoffs, and now I'm starting to think that if they do end up squeaking into the playoffs, it's tough at 2-7. It's going to be very, very close. It's going to be one of those games that comes down to week 18 against a division rival to make it into the playoffs. But the way I see this division playing out right now is how it currently is, honestly, for the most part. Well, let me backtrack here. The top part, I think, is what it's going to be. It's going to be Philly at the top and Dallas at the bottom, just because those offenses put up a lot of points. Now, the Dallas defense is what's holding them back. Now, I know they made a couple of moves at the deadline, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to really have them overtake this division. The Eagles still have a pretty decent defense, but really they have the most potent offense in this division. So that's why I'm sticking with the Eagles at top, Dallas at second. And then I think with the Commanders and the Giants being so close and with all the injuries that the Commanders have dealt with the last few weeks, I think they're going to end up flipping. I think the Giants will take third, and then the Commanders will unfortunately take the bottom of the division, which sucks because I predicted them to take this division. I was super excited for them coming into the year. But with all the injuries that they've dealt with so far in the first 9 weeks of the season, it's just going to be really hard for them to sustain any kind of momentum through here and making any kind of shot at taking this division. So I'm going to have them drop to the bottom in the NFC East. Heading over to the NFC South, the Buccaneers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are sitting at 6-2. And then surprisingly, Carolina Panthers at 5-4. And then the Atlanta Falcons at 3-5, even though it's been a very, very ugly 3-5. I cannot understand this team. It's really, you pick them to win, they lose. They get blown out by the Panthers. You pick them to win and they get blown out. You pick them to lose and they just look like a Super Bowl winning team. It's so frustrating to watch the Falcons right now. Michael Penix is definitely the best choice. Kirk Cousins looked horrendous when he started that one game for Penix. Drake London has been a superstar. Darnell Mooney hasn't really been involved, but this is Drake London's team. Bijan, they don't know how to use Bijan correctly, and they need to start using him the correct way, I think, and that's really going to be the deciding factor. I mean, their defense is pretty solid, but they need to get things figured out on offense if they're going to make any type of playoff run coming forward. And then the Saints are sitting here at last at 1-8. It's been, again, a very, very ugly 1-8. You have Tyler Shuck going in right now at quarterback after the benching of Spencer Rattler. They sent over Rashid Shaheed over to Seattle, so you really only have Chris Olave there as a target, and then you have Alvin Kamara at running back. So this is actually how I predicted the division at the beginning of the year: the Bucs, the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Saints. And I'm actually predicting that this is how it will stay. The Bucs, I know they've been dealing with injuries with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but Emeka Egbuka has been a big help at wide receiver. They have Cade Otton still there as a dependable and reliable tight end for Baker Mayfield. Bucky Irving's been dealing with an injury, but Rashad White has been a pretty decent running back in this place, but they will eventually get Bucky Irving. Eventually, they're going to get Chris Godwin, and then maybe Mike Evans if he's healthy enough. But this is a team that will be in the playoffs, so they will be hopefully at full strength before the division round or the wild card round in playoffs. But it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride for the Bucs, but I think this is how this division is going to end up being. So at least I could take a win on there, getting at least one of these division rights midway through the year. The NFC West, I'm going to take the L on this. Seattle Seahawks are sitting at number 1 with 6-2 as their record, followed by the Los Angeles Rams with the same record at 6-2. The San Francisco's 49ers, 6-3. So this is a very, very productive division so far. And then you have the Cardinals at 3-5, which is really unfortunate because I've started to actually really love the Cardinal fan base and the team after visiting their stadium multiple times and interacting with their fans down there. But it's been a really messy year for the Cardinals. I already mentioned it already. Kyler Murray hitting the IR. You got Jacoby Brissett, who is obviously the best quarterback. He's the most efficient one so far. Marvin Harrison had a great week with Jacoby Brissett there. They have a disastrous running back room right now, but that offense will run through Marvin and Trey McBride right now. Their defense has been pretty solid with Budda Baker there and everybody else on that defense. So This is going to be a very competitive division, I think. Aside from the Cardinals, unfortunately, it's going to be anybody's game right now. I know the Niners have been dealing with so many injuries, with George Kittle being out for a while. Brock Purdy has been out and will continue to be out until he's ready to go. So Mac Jones will lead this. Christian McCaffrey has been a top 5 running back every week, pretty much. The Rams have been awesome with Stafford staying healthy. Puka has been dealing with some injuries, though, but Devontae Adams has been a huge help for Stafford at wide receiver, excuse me. And then Kyron Williams has been pretty efficient, too, at the running back. So this is a tough one to predict. I think it's going to stay the same, though. I think Seattle will remain at the top. They are a really solid team, especially with getting Shaheed from the Saints to help Sam Darnold. Their defense has been banged up a little bit, but they've been a solid defense overall the first few weeks. So I'm going to predict the Seahawks at number 1, the Rams at number 2, the Niners at 3, and then the Cardinals, unfortunately, at 4. So that is my guess for the NFC West. Heading to my hometown division, the NFC North is getting pretty competitive now with this last week of football. You got the Green Bay Packers sitting at 5-2-1. I hate seeing that tie on the record. They really need to get rid of these ties. It's a very ugly record, and it just screws everything up because these guys are definitely not the best team in this division. They have been dealing with a lot of injuries. Jordan Love has been pretty underwhelming and inefficient at quarterback. Their wide receiver room is a mess. Josh Jacobs, their running back, has been the only real continuous momentum going through each week. He's been the most consistent and most efficient there. The defense, they acquired Micah Parsons from Dallas, that huge trade that went through in the middle of the season. So, but with Matthew Golden, the rookie, banged up, with the unknown of Jaden Reed even coming back, Christian Watson is so injury prone. You're sitting at Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks and Luke Musgrave with the Tucker Kraft injury, sidelining him for the rest of the year. It's going to be a pretty bumpy ride for the Green Bay Packers, I think. The Lions are sitting at 5-3. It's, again, been kind of a crazy first half for them. They just recently lost to Minnesota in Detroit, which blew my mind. Minnesota is looking pretty hopeful right now with McCarthy back at the helm and quarterback. But we'll see if Detroit can maintain the momentum that they've started. Jared Goff is looking pretty solid in the pocket there. You got St. Brown, who's been a top wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery will hopefully start getting more involved. It feels like it's been a pretty quiet year for those two running backs. And no surprise there with Ben Johnson leaving to be the head coach for the Bears. That is to be expected. So we'll see if the Lions can maintain a steady lead in this division. With the same record at 5-3, we got the Chicago Bears coming in at third in the division currently, with Ben Johnson, head coach, coming from Detroit. Caleb Williams has been great. He looked really good. Now, I know he was playing the Bengals defense, but he looked really, really, really solid in this past week. Rome Odunze, I know he's banged up, but he's been pretty much the number one target for Caleb Williams. With the Cole Kmet injury, it gave Colston Loveland, their rookie tight end, to showcase his skills, and I think he will be very involved going forward. He seemed to gain the trust of the team and Caleb Williams, so I think he'll be a huge help there. DJ Moore is a little banged up, but he has been starting to get involved a little bit more. He rushed in a touchdown and passed a touchdown instead of receiving one this week, which was crazy. And then Zaccheaus has been randomly popping up in the stats at the end of every game at being really involved. DeAndre Swift is banged up, but he's been really good at running back. But they do have Kyle Monangai, who went ballistic last week in his place at running back 1. So the Bears are looking really, really awesome right now. And then you have Minnesota, which has been a really crazy, crazy first half of the season. They are sitting at 4-4 after their huge upset against Detroit last week. We got McCarthy back at quarterback after going through the Carson Wentz roller coaster that was for the first in the middle of the weeks there when McCarthy was dealing with the ankle injury. But I think the way it happened, it was best for McCarthy. He got to sit there, he got to learn, he got to heal, he got to experience some wisdom from Carson Wentz and Kevin O'Connell. So I think that really helped him become that superstar quarterback that we saw last week against Detroit. Um, Justin Jefferson, hopefully he gets more involved. Hopefully Jordan Addison gets more involved. That trade for Adam Thielen seems pretty irrelevant right now. He hasn't really been involved. TJ Hawkinson has been a pretty big disappointment. Aaron Jones just came back from injury, but he's shown that he is the most efficient running back right now. But of course, we have Jordan Mason backing him up in case he does get injured because Aaron Jones is injury prone. But it's looking pretty hopeful for Minnesota right now after this huge upset with Detroit. They do have Baltimore coming up on Sunday, so we will see how they stack up against Lamar. So with the standings in this division at the end of week 18, I think the Green Bay Packers are actually going to drop down to the bottom of this division, and I think we're going to keep the same there. I think Detroit will take the top spot in the division. I think the Bears will end up taking the second spot, and then that will leave Minnesota taking the third spot in this division, with the Green Bay Packers falling all the way down to the bottom. But this is going to be a very, very fun division to watch, which was what I was hoping it would be going into the season. It's going to be very, very competitive with these tight records so far at week 10. So yeah, NFC North is going to be super, super fun to watch. And that looks like that was all the divisions for our division warfare. We're going to go through some sleepers and some bottom of the barrel picks right now. So second half sleeper teams. These are teams that I think are going to surprise us a lot in the second half. The NFC pick I have is the Chicago Bears. I think they are going to keep their momentum going with Caleb Williams really showing that he can be that top drafted quarterback that they invested in. For the most part, they've been pretty healthy. I know, like I said, DeAndre Swift has been banged up. DJ Moore has been banged up. Now Rome Odunze is a little banged up, but I think the Chicago Bears are going to be a second half sleeper for sure. And then on the AFC side, I think the Kansas City Chiefs will get it together and they will be a second half sleeper for sure. We'll see if they live up to the hype that they have created the last couple weeks. Bottom of the barrel teams. These are teams that are going to be at the bottom of the standings by the end of the week, the end of the year, and we'll be having top picks in next year's draft. The NFC pick, no surprise here, it's going to be the New Orleans Saints. I think it's going to be a very, very, very ugly and confusing second half of the year, especially with them sending Rashid Shaheed over to Seattle. The unknown at quarterback, I think these guys are going to start realizing that they need to just kind of implode and lose a bunch of games so that they can look forward to the draft and potentially get Arch Manning, who seems to be the consensus number one quarterback off the board in next year's draft. So I think the Saints have their eyes focused on the future right now. Then the AFC pick for bottom of the barrel is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. I think it's just going to continue to be a complete disaster with the departure of Jacoby Myers and the very, very weak defense that they have created there in Las Vegas. This offense, like I said, will run through Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty. And Geno Smith has been really terrible with the turnovers. So I think the Las Vegas Raiders will be the AFC bottom of the barrel team to watch the second half. So that is your division warfare segment of today's episodes. We are going to do one last thing before we head into the fantasy check-in, and that is the Chase-O-Meter. The awesome Chase-O-Meter has returned after week 9. The current running back ranking for Chase Brown is 14. He has gone from 30 to 14 since Joe Flacco has become the starter for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's looking promising for Miss Megan in her bet against James. That, of course, as a reminder, is the bet. Chase Brown must finish a top 10 running back by the end of the year. That is regular season. That's not playoffs, just regular season. If Megan is going to be $20 richer. If he does fall below the 10 spot, Mr. James Martins will be $20 richer. Going through the stats from week 9. Now, depending on your scoring system in your fantasy league, mine is pretty standard for the most part. It's a 6-point touchdown and a full PPR for receiving. He is sitting at 19.2 after week 9. He had 11 carries for 37 rushing yards, so not too efficient on the ground. Most of his points came from the receiving game. That was 8 receptions for 75 yards. He did not have a touchdown, unfortunately, but he did manage to save his fantasy value with the receiving game, which has benefited much from the Joe Flacco start. So we will return to the Chase-O-Meter in week 10, and hopefully we can maybe get a new standing inside the 10 for the first time this year. We will find out. Let's head over to the Fantasy Corner for some fantasy check-ins and our hero and villain of the week. All right, your week 9 hero of the week is Mr. Joe Flacco, quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals. His fantasy points for this week were 45.4 fantasy points. He had 31 completions for 470 passing yards with 4 touchdowns. This is the highest passing yard game of his career. Joe Flacco was just unleashed this week against the Bears, and it was incredible. Unfortunately, they did not win the game. Their defense let them down, and the Bears were able to score a last-minute touchdown to take that game. Speaking of the Bears, we have our villain of the week, which is Mr. Rome Odunze, wide receiver of the Chicago Bears. I cannot imagine how this happened, but it did. He managed to get a giant 0 with 47 points on the scoreboard. He had 3 targets and brought none of them in for 0 receptions. It's very confusing, and hopefully it's just a one-off in his really incredible year so far. He has obviously been the number 1 wide receiver for this team and has been very efficient each week, getting multiple touchdowns on the year, lots of receptions, lots of targets and touchdowns. It's just really weird that a game with such high volume of passing, he got a goose egg in here. 47-42 was the final score. It just blows my mind that Rome Odunze got 0. I think we'll talk about this a little bit more in today's showdown. Show me the money draft lineup. I think he will bounce back this week in week 10 after being a pretty squeaky wheel after this game. So I think he'll bounce back for sure. But he is unfortunately our villain of the week for week 9. Since it is the mid-season review, let's do a fantasy check-in with the top 5 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends real quick. And then I will pick a sleeper that could possibly break into the top 10 by the end of the year. So starting with quarterback, number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. Number 2 is Justin Herbert. 3 is Drake May. Attaboy Drake May. 4 is Mr. MVP Josh Allen. And then number 5 is my boy, Bo Nix. My sleeper for the quarterback position by the end of the year is Sam Darnold, quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. I think he is currently sitting at quarterback 14 or 13 right now. I think he could easily pop into the top 10 for sure, maybe even the top 5. We'll see how Rashid Shaheed gets involved there in Seattle. But I think Sam Darnold will be a big sleeper in the second half of this season at the quarterback position. Running backs. Christian McCaffrey is sitting at number 1. Number 2 is Jonathan Taylor. 3 is Devon Achane. 4, Bijan Robinson. And then number 5 is Josh Jacobs. I think Kyren Williams will break into the top 10 as our sleeper at running back. I think he is currently at running back 13, I think. So it seems kind of a cop-out being only a few positions there. But I think he will definitely break into the top 10 for sure with how that offense is rolling. Wide receiver, Jamar Chase, once again, is the number one wide receiver right now. Jackson Smith-Njigba, surprisingly, is number 2. He has been awesome. Amon-Ra St. Brown is at number 3. Puka Nacua, even with all his injuries, he is sitting at number 4. And then George Pickens is number 5 on this list. Of course, benefiting from the CeeDee Lamb injury. So definitely going to have to readjust his ranking as the season goes on and CeeDee Lamb gets even more acclimated back into the offense. Sleeper. Now, Emeka Egbuka, the superstar rookie wide receiver for the Bucs, he's the obvious choice to break into the top 10. I think he's currently sitting at 13, depending on your league standings. But he's, of course, going to break into the top 10 because of all their injuries, and he's just that good. But my real sleeper for the top 10 is T. Higgins, and he has very much benefited from the Joe Flacco start. Now, if Joe Burrow ends up coming back in the middle of December, I think that'll be even more of a help to T. Higgins. But I think T. Higgins will be a sleeper in the wide receiver room for the second half of the year because of the Joe Flacco start. And then finishing up, we have got tight ends. Trey McBride is at number 1 right now. Jake Ferguson is at number 2. Tyler Warren, the superstar tight end for the Colts, is at 3. Tucker Kraft is at 4, but he'll, of course, drop because of that season-ending injury. Number 5 is surprisingly Travis Kelce. Now, the obvious pick to break in the top 10 is Brock Bowers. I think he's sitting at tight end 11 or 12, so he'll probably even break into the top 5, if not be the number 1 tight end on the year because of Jacoby Myers leaving and him just having the offense run through him. It's inevitable that he's probably going to be the tight end number 1 for the rest of the year. But my real sleeper, now he's a little banged up right now, but he seems to have a real big rapport with Jackson Dart in New York, is Theo Johnson. Now, if he would just work on not dropping the ball, I think he could be a really big superstar in the second half for the Giants at the tight end position. But he seems to be getting a lot of targets. He's getting red zone reads from Jackson Dart. They seem to be building a connection there. So I think Theo Johnson will be a sleeper at the tight end position for the second half of the year. So that'll do it for this week's Fantasy Corner. We'll catch up with the Week 10 villain and hero next week on the show. Let's head over to the Week 10 game slate. So before we get into the Week 10 game slate, let's take a peek at the pick tracker from Week 9. And Week 9 was not the greatest week, but it's not the worst week this year. 8 correct picks and 5 wrong picks. So made some pretty dicey picks there with taking the Bengals instead of the Bears. It's just really, really unfortunate, but we're going to shoot for the moon for this week in Week 10. So looking at the buys, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs on bye, Titans, Bengals, and the Cowboys. So if you are a fan base of those teams, sit back, crack open a beer, and enjoy some football without stressing out or screaming at your team. Thursday night football, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Denver Broncos. My Denver Broncos, baby, at home in Denver. I love it when they're at home. They are a superpower team for sure. Looks like the line is sitting at minus 8.5 for Denver. Over under is 42.5. I'm taking the Broncos. They're my team. They are definitely one of the top teams in the AFC right now with their number 1 defense. Bo Nix has been great. The Raiders are a mess right now. We'll see how they function without Jacoby Myers there, a wide receiver. This is going to be a big division game, but the Raiders defense is nothing to be frightened of. So I think Bo Nix will have a fun time here. Hopefully throwing to Cortland Sutton. They need to get Sutton more involved. And hopefully Jake and Dobbins can bounce back from his low production last week. So I'm taking the Broncos on Thursday night. We've got another early Sunday morning game. We're heading to Berlin, Germany this time. We've got the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are favored by 6.5. The over-under is 48.5. I'm picking the Colts here. Atlanta is just too confusing to pick. The Colts, they are going to bounce back from their loss to Pittsburgh last week. I think they're going to easily take this game over in Germany and add to their awesome record and go 8-2 on the season. Heading into the noon slate and the 3:00 slates on Sunday, we've got the New Orleans Saints taking on the Carolina Panthers. Carolina is favored by 5.5. The over-under is a measly 39.5. I'm taking the Panthers here. I truly believe in the Panthers. I think they're going to have a great rest of season. And the Saints have been just a giant mess right now. And I don't see them winning that many games this year, if any more at all. It's tough to see, especially with Shaheed leaving to go to Seattle. That's going to hurt that offense even more because you're just leaving Olave there. And Alvin Kamara has definitely taken a step back this year. He's definitely going to be aging out. He could potentially not be with this team next year. So I'm taking the Panthers to beat their division rival at home pretty handily, I think, for sure. The New York Giants take on the Chicago Bears. The Bears are favored by 4.5. The over-under is 47.5. This one was tough. I went back and forth on this one all week. I originally had the Giants, but now with the Theo Johnson injury and him not being as efficient with catching the ball, I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears. I'm going to ride that Bears train in Chicago, and I think they're going to win this one and keep the momentum going into Week 10. So I'm taking the Bears this week to take down the Giants. This is another one that I struggled with a lot all week. The Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Houston Texans in Texas. Jacksonville's actually favored by 1 point, so chuck that out the window. It's pretty much a toss-up at this point. The over-under is a measly 37.5. No surprise there, because it's possible we won't get C.J. Stroud. Now, the way I ultimately went about picking this game, I looked at the defenses. Houston is definitely the better defense, I think. Now with the Travis Hunter injury and the Brian Thomas Jr. injury that could sideline him this week, that leaves Parker Washington and now the newly acquired Jacoby Myers. I'm taking Houston here to win at home. This was a tough one to pick, though. I originally had the Jaguars, but even if Stroud doesn't pass through protocol, and it is Davis Mills, I trust this Texans defense more than I do the Jaguars defense. So I'm going to pick the Texans this week to take down the Jaguars. The Buffalo Bills take on Miami Dolphins in Miami. Buffalo is favored by a whopping 9.5 points. The over-under is 50. This is the highest over-under of the week. I've got the Bills taking this one pretty handily on the road. I think Josh Allen is going to massacre this defense. I think Tua will probably end up struggling against Buffalo's defense, and this is going to be pretty much a slaughter fest for Buffalo, I think. So I'm taking Buffalo for sure here. The Baltimore Ravens head to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Baltimore is favored by 4. The over-under is 48.5. This is what I call the Purple Bowl. This is the Lamar going up against J.J. McCarthy. I'm sticking. This was a tough one, too. What did I pick? Let me head to my notes here. I think I took... I did take Baltimore. This is my matchup of the week. I did struggle with this one a little bit. I was kind of leaning towards Minnesota just because of the defense. But with Lamar back, and we'll see how Derrick Henry handles the Brian Flores defense. It's in Minnesota, so that was another factor I took in there where I was leaning towards Minnesota. But I'm going to take the Ravens to bounce back once again with Lamar. Mark Andrews is getting more involved now. Zay Flowers has some potential to have a pretty decent game. We'll see how J.J. McCarthy does against the Baltimore defense. They haven't been great this year, so it could be a potential shootout. That's why this is my matchup of the week. But I am going to go with Baltimore Ravens. But I think this is going to be a really exciting game. It's going to be pretty close. I think it'll probably come down to a field goal, I think. And I think Lamar will get them in that position to make that field goal. Cleveland Browns take on the New York Jets. This is going to be a disgusting game. Cleveland is favored by 2.5. I got to imagine because of their defense. And it is a measly over-under of 37.5, just like the Jaguars-Texan game. Again, I did look at the defense in this game. I like Cleveland's defense a whole lot better. Now, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Dillon Gabriel, but Justin Fields has definitely struggled this entire year. With Garrett Wilson being banged up and Breece Hall clearly not wanting to be a Jet, I'm taking Cleveland to win this game on the road against the Jets. The New England Patriots take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was in consideration for my match of the week. This is my backup match of the week. Tampa Bay is favored by 2.5. The over-under is 48.5. This was another tough one for me, but I think the streak ends here, and I think Baker Mayfield gets the win coming out of the bye. I think this will crush the 6-win streak that Drake May has very impressively done so far this year, but I am going to take Tampa Bay to win this at home coming off the bye. Arizona Cardinals take on the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are favored by 6.5. The over-under is 44.5. So we got Jacoby Brissett going against Sam Darnold. I definitely trust Sam Darnold more than Brissett. So I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks. Their defense has been really solid as well. But I think this is going to be a big battle of defensive play. Arizona, I already mentioned, has a really good defense too this year. So this is, it could get up to 44.5 just because Sam Darnold could score that many points. But this could also be a very low scoring game with that defense and being a division rival. But I'm going to take Seattle to win this in Seattle for sure. The Los Angeles Rams take on the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. The Rams are favored by 4.5. The over-under is 49.5. I am taking the Rams in this game. I thought about taking the Niners just because McCaffrey has been superstar, but the Rams defense has really been solid. Stafford is playing out of his mind right now. Puka should be in this game. I think he was practicing or is expected to practice. And Devontae Adams has been a really awesome number 2 for Stafford, and Kyren Williams has been a really reliable running back as well. So I'm taking the Rams to win this on the road against a division rival. The Detroit Lions take on the Washington Commanders. Detroit is favored by 8. Surprised that's only 8 with Marcus Mariota starting. The over-under is 49.5. They must be expecting Detroit to score a lot of points in here. I am taking Detroit. That is an easy one. I would have taken Detroit regardless, even if Jaden Daniels was playing in here. I think Detroit is the better team overall. Commanders are just really, really banged up on every side of the ball. Wide receiver, running back, quarterback, defense. It's just a mess there in Washington. So I'm going with Detroit to win this game. Sunday Night Football. We've got Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers taking on Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers. It is in Los Angeles. The Chargers are favored by 3. The over-under is 45.5. I am taking the Chargers to win this game. I know they barely won against the Titans, but at home, prime time, I think the Chargers and Justin Herbert get it done. You know, it was pretty impressive that Aaron Rodgers was able to take down Daniel Jones and that high-powered Colts team. But I'm going with the Chargers here on Sunday Night Football. Monday Night Football, we've got a really cool game going on. Philadelphia Eagles head over to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers. What is the line here? The Green Bay is actually favored by 2.5, probably because they're at home, with the over-under being 44.5. I am taking Philly in this game. They are the healthiest and more high-powered team for sure. Jordan Love has been pretty disappointing. He's had a couple spike weeks, but for the most part, he's been pretty disappointing at quarterback. They're dealing with a lot of injuries right now, and with Tucker Kraft being out for the rest of the year, it's going to suck for Jordan Love. I know Micah Parsons helps that defense out a lot, but I think the Eagles have such high-powered offense that they're just going to throw all over this Packer defense. We'll see if Saquon Barkley can get anything going on the ground. He's been pretty disappointing as well this year, but Jalen Hurts is probably going to throw like crazy to Devontae Smith, and we'll see if A.J. Brown is in this game. I think he's expected to practice if he's not practicing already. So, and Dallas Goedert has been really good in place of either Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown, whoever has been gone. So I'm taking Philadelphia to win this on Monday night against the Packers. So that is this week's game picks. Again, the matchup of the week is Baltimore and Minnesota. We will monitor that game, and we'll see if it ends up being the matchup of the week. I am super excited for the New England Patriots and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game as well. That could be a shootout as well. So some really cool matchups. Let's end the show like we always do with a DFS lineup, and let's see if it can show us the money. Before I reveal this week's lineup, I actually did manage to double my money on last week's lineup. So awesome. I turned $5 into $10. So that was really, really exciting. That's the second week, I believe, this year that I've been able to double my money on these lineups. So we're going to continue again with a $5 lineup. This is got first place at a potential $500. And I think second place then drops down to like $300, then $200, and so on and so forth. So this week, I'm rolling with Jackson Dart at quarterback for a couple of reasons. He's pretty cheap. He's only $5,700 this week. He's got that rushing upside, and he's going against the Chicago Bears defense that gave up 42 points to Joe Flacco. So I'm going to roll with Jackson Dart and hopefully just scoop up all those rushing points and maybe get a couple touchdowns from him in the passing game. So we're rolling with Jackson Dart at quarterback this week. Running back, Jaylen Warren is one of the running backs. He is sitting at 5,800 on Sunday night against the Chargers. And then Rico Dowdle. This was a no-brainer against New Orleans Saints. He has been awesome since he has been pretty much been named the starter. He is sitting at 6,300. Now he's a little banged up. And of course, if he is unable to go, I will switch this around and fill in Chuba Hubbard. But Rico Dowdle was to me a smash play this week against New Orleans. So I hope he ends up playing because he is going to get so many opportunities in this game. Wide receiver, I'm going with Emeka Egbuka coming off of the bye. He is sitting at 7,000, so I paid a little bit up, but I think he's going to have that opportunity against New England, and I'm predicting that game is going to be a shootout between Baker and Drake May, so I wanted a piece of that game. I think Bucks will end up winning that game, so I ended up going with Emeka Egbuka. Stefon Diggs was in consideration here, and he is my flex, so I'm going to reveal that. I managed to fit him into my flex. He was originally one of my 3 wide receivers, but after some tinkering at the tight end and defense position, I was able to squeeze Stefon Diggs. So I went out of order there a little bit, but Stefon Diggs in that same game is in the flex. I wanted pieces of that game because I think it's going to be a shootout. My other 2 wide receivers, Devontae Smith is sitting at 6,000. Oh, I forgot to mention Stefon Diggs is at 5,800, so not too high of a price for sure. Devontae Smith, like I said, 6,000 going against Green Bay. He is healthy, so if A.J. Brown ends up not playing, he's definitely going to be a smash play there as the number 1 target. But if A.J. Brown does end up playing, I think he's still going to get plenty of targets to be viable in this lineup. And then Courtland Sutton going against the Raiders. I wanted the go-to target for Bo Nix because I think he's going to shred this Raiders defense. So I wanted to squeeze in Courtland Sutton here. He's at 6,200 on DraftKings. Tight end. This was a little tough. I was going back and forth on a couple of players, but I ultimately went with Dalton Kincaid at 4,300. He's been the go-to guy for Josh Allen, and I think Josh Allen is going to massacre this Miami's defense. So I wanted one of his targets. So I'm going with Dalton Kincaid at tight end. And then defense, I was kind of circling through 3 or 4 different defenses, but I went with the Browns defense. They are only 2,900, surprisingly, going up against Justin Fields and the Jets. So we're going to roll with the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett, and hopefully he gets 5 or 6 stacks again in that game. So that is the lineup for Week 10, and that is our episode, our mid-season review episode in the books. That was a lot to cover, but it was a lot of fun to go over how crazy the first 9 weeks have been and looking ahead to the next 9 weeks. Couple reminders, feel free to go back and listen to the rest of the episodes that I've done so far this year on the show. A lot of fun episodes with Division Warfares, and we did a mock draft early in August. And then every week we went through reactions to the previous week. Also, check out my movie podcast, Cinematic Reviews, every week on YouTube. And then you can also listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast listening service. We just got through the Fright Nights event in October. The Tron Ares episode finally aired yesterday, so check out that. We're going to jump into Marvel Fridays as our next event. So every Friday, we're going to talk about MCU movie in preparation for the new Avengers movie coming out. And then we'll do a bunch of other new release movies and shows along the way to cap out the end of the year. So check out that podcast, Cinematic Reviews, as well. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. I hope you had a blast these first 9 weeks of the NFL season. And let's look forward to another exciting and hopefully less injury-filled second half of the year. We'll see you all at the end of Week 10.